On February 14, 2000, at around 2:45 a.m., in Shelby, North Carolina, Asha Degree, a 9-year-old girl with a bright smile and a loving family, vanished into thin air. Her disappearance would leave a trail of mystery and unanswered questions for years to come. A heavy rain poured down that morning, making the normally quiet streets eerily quiet. Her parents were asleep, unaware that their child was no longer in the house. It was as if Asha had just vanished into the darkness. As the first light of dawn broke, the streets were bathed in a golden glow, but the scene was shrouded in an eerie silence. The sound of raindrops on the pavement and the distant hum of crickets were the only sounds that broke the stillness. The heavy rain had washed away any footprints, leaving behind only the faint scent of wet earth and leaves. The trees, once swaying gently in the wind, now stood still, their branches heavy with water. The world was holding its breath, waiting for someone to make a move. Asha, a fourth grader with a shy smile and big brown eyes, was known for her kind heart and her love of school. She had her whole life ahead of her, a world full of possibilities and dreams. But on that chilly morning, she was nowhere to be found. Her book bag, once slung over her shoulder, lay abandoned on the side of the road, a poignant reminder of her disappearance. Her family, who loved her with all their hearts, would never be the same again. As Asha walked along the highway, she caught the attention of a few motorists who reported seeing her. They described her as being alone, walking quickly, and glancing over her shoulder as if she was being followed. Some of them tried to wave her down or blow their horns, but Asha didn't respond. She seemed to be in a trance-like state, her eyes fixed on something ahead of her. She ran into a wooded area when one driver tried to approach her, never to be seen again. Before we go further, hit subscribe and the bell. We post new cases every single day. If you want to stay up to date with the latest true crime stories, you'll want to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Let me take you back to the very beginning of this story, a story that begins with a family's greatest nightmare. Asha Degree was born to a loving family in Shelby, North Carolina, a small town nestled in the heart of the Blue Ridge Mountains. She was a bright and curious child, loved by everyone who knew her. Her family was close-knit, with Asha's parents, her older brother, and her maternal grandparents all living in the same house. But on that fateful morning, Asha's life took a drastic turn, a turn that would leave her family and community reeling in shock. The Degree family was a normal, all-American family, with Asha's father working as a mechanic and her mother as a nurse. They had a comfortable home, with a big backyard where Asha loved to play with her brother. But beneath the surface, there were signs of tension and stress. Asha's parents were going through a tough time, with her father struggling to find work and her mother dealing with the stress of a demanding job. The family was trying to make ends meet, but it was clear that they were on the brink of a crisis. Little did they know, their lives were about to take a dramatic turn, a turn that would shatter their world forever. Asha Degree was the central person in this case, a 9-year-old girl living in Shelby, North Carolina, United States with her family. Her life was that of a typical young girl, but her disappearance would leave her family and investigators searching for answers. The Degree family was made up of Asha's parents and younger brother. Asha was known to be a sweet and kind girl, loved by those who knew her. Her disappearance would soon become a mystery that would captivate the nation. Asha's daily life was one of a young girl who enjoyed school and spending time with her family. Her parents were reportedly loving and supportive, always encouraging her to excel in school. Asha's family struggled financially, which forced them to rely on government assistance. As for Asha's personality, she was described as a happy and outgoing girl who loved to read and play with her friends. Asha's smile and bright personality made her a likable person, but her disappearance would ultimately leave a void in the hearts of her loved ones. Asha's likability and relatability came from her gentle nature and the many good qualities she possessed. Her disappearance sparked a wave of sympathy from the community, as people struggled to understand why this 9-year-old girl would suddenly vanish. Asha's family was overwhelmed with grief, and her younger brother would forever be affected by her disappearance. As investigators began to dig deeper, they realized that Asha's case was more than just a simple missing persons case. The more they learned about Asha, the more they realized she was a girl who would leave a lasting impact on those who knew her. Asha's relationships were built on trust, which made it harder for investigators to understand why she would leave her home without warning. Her family thought they knew Asha's habits and routine, but on that fateful night, she defied all expectations. As for who Asha trusted, it's clear that she felt comfortable leaving her home, possibly thinking that someone would be there to look out for her. The more investigators learned about Asha's relationships, the more they realized that something was not quite right. With Asha's trust issues still unclear, one question remained: what led Asha to leave her home that morning in the pouring rain? February 14, 2000, was a chilly and wet Valentine's Day morning in Shelby, North Carolina, as a low-pressure system brought heavy rain and strong winds to the area. At around 3:30 a.m., the storm made its presence known, with reports of thunder and lightning illuminating the dark sky. 9-year-old Asha Degree lived with her family on Oakcrest Drive, a quiet residential street lined with trees and homes that seemed to be bathed in an eerie, pre-dawn gloom. The streets were empty, save for the occasional car or truck driven by early risers heading to work. The only sounds were the occasional peal of thunder and the patter of raindrops on the pavement. The previous evening, Asha's parents, Harold and Aquila, had gone to bed around 10 p.m., expecting to wake up to the usual morning routine of getting ready for school and work. Asha, who was in the 4th grade, had been tucked into bed by her parents earlier that night, with a promise of pancakes for breakfast the next morning. However, sometime between 10 p.m. and 3:30 a.m., Asha had slipped out of her bedroom and made her way downstairs to her room. There, she had packed her book bag and grabbed a flashlight, seemingly determined to leave her home in the dead of night. It remained unclear what had prompted this sudden move. As Asha made her way out of her home, she walked down the driveway and onto North Carolina Highway 18, a 2-lane road that wound its way through the rural landscape. Motorists reported seeing her in the early morning hours, but it wasn't until around 4:30 a.m. that a driver attempted to approach her. At some point, Asha had left the roadside and run into a wooded area, where she vanished from sight. The last reported sighting of Asha was around 1.3 miles from her home, near a wooded area that seemed to absorb everything in its path. In the end, it was as if Asha had simply vanished into thin air. One of the most shocking aspects of Asha's disappearance was the discovery of her personal belongings near the wooded area where she was last seen. This included her book bag, which was found to be empty except for a few loose pages of a book, a flashlight, and a pencil. What's even more chilling is that Asha's book bag was later found buried at a construction site along Highway 18, in Morganton, over a year after her disappearance. It's clear that Asha had carefully planned her exit, but it's unclear why she had done so, or where she ended up. As detectives investigated the scene, they began to piece together a timeline of events that would change the course of their investigation forever. As the sun began to rise on February 14, 2000, a frantic search effort was launched to find Asha, who had been missing for several hours. It was her parents, Harold and Aquila, who first reported her disappearance to the authorities, when they realized that she was not in her room when they woke up. The first responders to the scene were met with a sense of panic and confusion, as they began to search the surrounding area for any sign of Asha. As the news of Asha's disappearance spread, the community came together to help search for her, but their efforts were ultimately unsuccessful. It was as if Asha had left no trail, no witnesses, and no clues behind, leaving investigators with more questions than answers. Comment below, what do you think really happened here? Was Asha planning an escape, or did something far more sinister occur? As we delve deeper into this case, the full scale of what happened becomes clear, and the shocking truth begins to unravel. As the investigation into Asha's disappearance continued, investigators began to follow up on leads and interview witnesses, but it wasn't until a decade later that the case was reopened. In 2015, the FBI joined the search for answers, and a reward was offered for information leading to Asha's safe return. But as the years went by, the case remained unsolved, with Asha's fate hanging in the balance. It was only in 2025, when the case was reclassified as a homicide investigation, that the scales of justice finally began to tip in the right direction. And as detectives dug deeper into the evidence, they uncovered a shocking new lead that would change the course of the investigation forever. Police first responded to the disappearance of Asha Degree by canvassing the area and speaking to her family members. They interviewed her parents, Harold and Aquila, and her siblings, O'Brien. The family described how Asha had left their home during the early morning hours and walked along Highway 18. Several motorists reported seeing her, but the last confirmed sighting was when a driver attempted to approach her about 1.3 miles from her home. Asha was seen walking away from the road and into a wooded area. The key piece of evidence that changed everything was the discovery of Asha's bookbag buried at a construction site along Highway 18 in Morganton. This suggested that Asha had not intended to run away, as initially speculated, but rather had been taken from the roadside. The presence of her bookbag, which contained her schoolwork and other personal belongings, indicated that she had been abducted. The police investigation began to shift from a runaway scenario to an abduction. Investigators started re-examining the initial witnesses and the crime scene. The main suspects in the case included several individuals who lived in the area and had been questioned by police. Some had alibis for the time of Asha's disappearance, but others remained unaccounted for. The police also looked into the possibility that Asha might have been taken by a stranger. As the investigation continued, several names emerged as potential suspects, but no concrete evidence linked them to the crime. The police were working under the assumption that Asha's disappearance was a premeditated act, rather than a random encounter. The red herring in the case was the initial speculation that Asha might have been taken by someone who had known her. This theory led investigators to focus on the idea that the abductor was a family acquaintance, rather than a stranger. As a result, the police spent months questioning family friends and acquaintances, which ultimately led to a dead end. The investigation was put back on track when the focus shifted to the possibility that Asha was abducted by a stranger. However, not all leads were fruitful, and the case remained unsolved for years. The police had to re-evaluate their strategy and prioritize new leads in order to move forward. The twist or revelation nobody predicted was that Asha's disappearance was reclassified as a homicide investigation in 2025, more than 25 years after she vanished. This shocking revelation came after a series of searches and a renewed investigation by the FBI. The case had been previously investigated as a potential runaway, but now it was clear that something far more sinister had occurred. Investigators had been stumped for years, but new evidence and leads finally brought them to this conclusion. This stunning turn of events has left many wondering what could have happened to Asha and who could be responsible. New details emerged about the evidence that led to this reclassification, including forensic analysis of Asha's belongings and witness statements. Investigators had been following up on leads and interviewing potential suspects, but it wasn't until they revisited a construction site where Asha's backpack was found in 2001 that they made a major breakthrough. This area had previously been cleared, but new searches turned up evidence that had gone unnoticed before. The fact that Asha's belongings were found buried at a construction site, just 1.3 miles from her home, suggests that she was in a desperate and panicked state. This is a chilling reminder that Asha